On this channel, we've talked of politics, of analysis, of cultural theory, and for all of these things you may have noticed, there is a certain prefix I tend to use to indicate my departure from various preceding positions on the subject matter. Cranioanalysis, for example, is the name I'm using for now to describe the analysis of entification using fulcrum charts, because of its close ties and central importance within craniomodernity. Craniomodernity, in turn, is the proposed cultural condition in which craniomodernism is the dominant cultural movement, and the word craniomodernism is a shortening of craniocentric post-metamodernism, i.e. a reaction to metamodernism that accepts what I might term the craniocentric premise. What is this premise? Well, in order to talk about this craniocentric premise, we now have to talk about a new, hotly debated subject for this channel, the meaning of life. Those who claim that there is one meaning to human life, by nature are claiming that there is an objective static essence that all humans share, that such meaning is in reference to. These essentialists claim that said essence precedes our very existence, and thus is present in all humans and not in non-humans. Religiously defined meanings of life, i.e. meanings imposed on us by God from before we even started existing, are an example of essentialist thinking here. But this perspective does not fit well with evolutionary theory, which we all ought to accept, by the way, in which strictly objectively defined essences to either species or socially created categorizations like race and gender become impossible to ascertain. We are the way we are due to compiled conditioning, coupled with mass extinction of all conditioning compilations incompatible with material conditions. There is no reason to introduce the notion of any bequeathed, identical, static, immovable essence given to humanity at any point during its evolution, either by a deity or by nature. It is oversimplifying to the point of falsehood to reduce any life to a crude caricature of identity or identicalness, as opposed to a more nuanced picture of changing convergences and divergences, both biologically and behaviorally. This sort of essentialism is also, when applied to subjective and interpretive frameworks for categorizing people like race and gender, something that can do great harm. Reduction of, for example, average intelligence or behavior simply to the group in question, without contextualization, has at times been the willful misunderstanding that has been adopted at the root of white supremacy and patriarchy. Upon a more nuanced and contextualized analysis, we can begin to see the social constructs cultivating our attitudes and actions and their sociological primacy. Anyhow, in this sense, we determine and cultivate our purpose, our meaning, through making choices and mentally structuring our understandings of the world and ourselves accordingly. In doing so, we define our ontology, we set our own hierarchies of being, and we operate in accordance with such things. When we make a choice truly, freely from coercion of human beings, material conditions, or social hierarchies, we are exercising subjectivity. We are running our situation through our complex, subjectivizing, abstractifying epistemology, and producing from it a unique choice. There is an argument here to be made that every free decision is, in a sense, an act of implicit intellectualism, and is inevitably interpretive. As we self-define the meaning to our lives, in where we choose to take it, as existentialism might posit, it is making choices, hence interpretation, hence a degree of subjective abstract thinking and rationalizing, that spurs the development and cultivation of an essence, a meaning for life. The crux, ultimately, is that not only is the meaning of life preceded by our existence, but it's derived from an interpretation, from abstract subjective thinking, as opposed to from an objectively derived formula. Whatever that necessarily subjective meaning of life may be, and it must be subjective given the absence of identical essence across humanity, it comes from interpretation, a form of abstract thought. We have covered many times the fact that there is no objective perception, so abstract thought and subjectivity must precede any condition we interpret. thus assigning meaning, questioning and understanding what meaning may be, and then living by said meaning, are all linked to our capacity as human beings to engage in abstract thought, to exercise subjectivity, to leave our mark, including, for that matter, finding out if that mark is indeed worth leaving. We must accentuate the human condition by generating and accumulating as much abstract thought as we can. This is the craniocentric premise. It is encompassed in the notion that the human condition is therefore synonymous with subjectification and abstractification, the codifying of subjective reflection into a larger created system from our interpretation. It gives us the conclusion that to accentuate humanity, to be pro-human, we must accentuate those things. Cranioanalysis gives us insight into how this plays out, and which conflated processes come to constitute a meaning of life. Craniomodernism acknowledges and platforms this abstract thought consequently. We might even then call the attempt to facilitate this, namely craniomodernity, the fundamentally pro-human political or cultural movement. Now, you may ask, don't all animals interpret and respond to their surroundings? Don't all animals make choices? Aren't then all animals intellectuals? And the answer is, put simply, no, because there's an important caveat here. In our current world, only humans are able to accumulate the product of our responses and interpretations, and formulate from that abstract principles and meanings. To other animals, the rationale to their choices, the constructing of frameworks of understanding, eludes their conscious thought. Only we can navigate the subconscious with our conscious thought. All humans, regardless of abilities or limitations, internally create complex epistemologies that all merit appreciation, which we can then seek inspiration from. All humans instinctually develop shared cultures as a sum of accumulated abstract thought. Again, our goal should be to accelerate and appreciate this process. But due to a lack of shared reference, say with the bovine or canine experience, we do not create shared culture in the same way outside of humanity. Therefore, in the generation and accumulation of subjectivity, the principle upon which to operate is centered around what advances human intellectual perpetuity, what allows us to engage in the least obstructed, least coerced subjectivity. It's a consequentialist ethical position in which the consequence is increased human involvement, increased human impact, and increased human knowledge of what we think to be the right mark to leave. So, to apply such a lens to questions, for instance, of animal life and meat eating, the question we must ask ourselves is this: does this practice bring us more satisfaction or more discomfort? Does it keep us immersed in a material thought, or does it allow us to immerse ourselves instead in the more abstract? Does it allow us to both fluidly assert and attack fulcra at ease, or does it rigidify us or coerce us into a set assumption around which we must structure our lives? What are the doors it opens for cultural expression, and what implications does it have for understanding reality without cultural bias? Is living according to virtue essential to enacting proactive change, or does it distract from more consequential collective action on the level of production, or even make that less practical? I don't believe there's a catch-all answer to these questions, especially after taking into account cultivated fetishes and cognitive dissonance, but these are the questions craniocentric ethics must pose. And similar questions can be applied to many other different moral and ethical debates, all fundamentally returning to how each affects human subjectivity. There is a lot I find appreciable about the vegan movement, but the main tendency I would caution against within it would be the refusal to recognize an ontological difference between human person, which has the capacity to generate and accumulate abstractities, and other animals which do not. This difference, not based on essence but rather practical consequence, merits different treatment philosophically, such as in human prioritization of human life. Incidentally, this ontological point can also be demonstrated in the distinction between a fetus and a baby, why the latter is a person and the former is not. From the moment the child is born, in which they come into the world, in which they shall live, so to speak, they are already reacting to their surroundings and hence beginning to build their epistemology into a framework of subjectivity. Consequential identification has started for them at this point. It is hence detrimental to the generation of a range of subjectivity to take that life of a child in almost any situation. Murder, in principle, is wrong from a craniocentrically derived ethical system for this reason. Whereas a fetus has not been exposed to the world yet. If there is indeed any identification or epistemology-building activity they implicitly engage in, it is not with any consequence to the world in which they will come to live in, react to, and express themselves within. Hence, the abortion of a fetus is not an erasure of human subjectivity, but the dispelling of an anticipatory fetish. And while there's nothing wrong with attaching additional anticipatory meanings and qualities onto your fetus, insisting others fetishize theirs in the same way is an attack upon their subjectivity, and hence not a defense of subjectivity all overall. There is also to note the violinist argument that it shouldn't matter whether a fetus is person or not as to whether or not we should ensure reductive rights are upheld. One could argue that this can also be reconciled with craniocentric ethics through the importance of usufruct to cultural self-expression, and hence the right for someone to have control of their body in so long as they are in use of it, which would essentially mean their whole life. It might not surprise you to learn that in my own forays into academia, I am predominantly a man of the arts, humanities, and social sciences, as opposed to formal natural or applied sciences. It is no surprise that the disciplines most predisposed with fundamentally subjective interpretation and formulating such into principles, premises, and epistemes are called humanities. Participating in said humanities is merely an extension of performing that human condition in a formal and disciplined academic context. Therefore, if we accept that interpretation must ultimately precede knowledge, so must the humanities precede any sciences less variable in subjectivity. Underneath all the systems of understanding and deduction we have, there is some abstract philosophy in everything, even if it is in coming to trust in one's senses, or matching perception with rationalization, navigating cognitive dissonances. Our building of an identity, of preference, of knowledge, of personality, becoming who we are, is a question at its root of our building a philosophical framework by which to understand the world. This is the human value of humanities for you, with arts resulting as the subsequent expressions or products of our humanity, and this is why the two are so vital to investigate and study. Scientific and mathematical systems, don't get me wrong, are incredibly interesting and provide pertinent insights too, and they also do often require degrees of interpretation for that matter, at least when they're done properly. But I would contest the often made claim by their practitioners that such systems convey objectivity or exist as universally objective. They, as with any other purportedly objective system, are less simple than being binary coded into some programming for the universe. They are systems designed to best tie perception, a subjective, perhaps largely intersubjective thing, to a framework of understanding, another ultimately subjective intersubjective thing. And hence, by being constructed and designed by humans to navigate and link two subjective variables, they too are not immune from being preceded by the analysis of subjectivity provided by the humanities, or the expression of subjectivity provided by the arts. Nonetheless, pragmatically, the systems we have established here seem to largely work in pattern prediction between the two, making them nonetheless extremely useful, such as, for instance, in medical advancement, technological capabilities, or historical retelling. Pattern prediction within existing academic traditions or cultural traditions is largely something that can be automated, and even more efficiently carried out through computing technology. Perhaps this is why artificial intelligence, as it currently exists, can much more easily be used to extrapolate existing systems to new discoveries and conclusions, be it scientific or even artistic traditions with clearly established rules or protocols, than to organically create new or add to traditions in a subjective manner. Emulation, finding codified rules and protocols and copying them, is not subjectivity, nor is it humanity, nor is it personhood. Whereas the complexity and development of an epistemology that can authentically to itself interpret its surroundings and spit out something abstractly new, that can organically navigate when to perform rule adherence and rule breaking, this is subjectivity that I can only see as coming from humanity, even once all the menial and objective tasks, i.e., those for which we value predictability and standardization over subjectivity or interpretation, are rightly automated. So, could an AI be a person? Well, if one were to build a synthetic human brain and spend many years conditioning it and developing it through living a human experience as one would a non-synthetic human brain, then sure. But there are assumedly more straightforward ways to make people, or so I've been told. All in all, I would happily accept that as the direct, less interpretive work is taken over by machines, humanity's role will become progressively more centered around intellectualism, culture, desire, subjectivity, abstraction, philosophy, the things you can't objectively program and hence would have difficulty programming an AI to do, have they not been raised, developed, and cultivated as human themselves. This is a wonderful prospect, and I think it accentuates our humanity more than any other future. So it's the future that I believe we ought to all fight for to realize. The craniocentric premise presents itself with an ideal to strive for, that being the concept around which this entire series revolves, intellectual perpetuity. It constitutes a condition in which one can immerse themselves entirely in choice, subjectivity, desire, the abstract, the hypothetical, and hence most efficiently generate their own expressive contribution to human culture. It's about being free from the restrictive systems of coercion, which aim to turn us more so into formulaic, objective machines than subjective agents, and consequently maximizing both the uniqueness and frequency of our expression. And all this in turn bringing about a sort of cultural golden age, with the exponential increase of abstract thought to inspire further subjectivity, and resulting with the development of all kinds of different traditions of thinking and living, as well as the creation of entirely new ones. There are two major conditions for this, the first being the removal of social anchors that pin us to certain fulcra, grand and voluntary hierarchies, property, so forth. And the second being the satisfaction of anchors that cannot be removed, such as the biological demand for food and water, so that we can get to the more open subjectivity as quickly as possible. Making sure these conditions are met is where the more political videos of this series come into play. You may be inclined to think of Towards a New Perpetuity as a political web series, because usually the topics and figures I talk about here happen to be first and foremost political. So it may surprise you to hear that this particular video may in fact actually be the most important one yet. All of the other positions I hold, be they communism, usufruct, controlled socialization, whatever they are only my beliefs because I believe them to advance humanity towards intellectual perpetuity. It is all derived from that craniocentric premise, and I would abandon each and every one of them if I ever came to the conclusion that they no longer serve this aim. So when you strip it down to the fundamentals, my politics is not dictated by personal self-interest or a longing for cosmic justice, rather solely in advocating for the human condition as a whole. Before I am a communist or a usufructarian, I am pro-culture, and I am pro-human. Hopefully, when you do get around to watching the other videos of the series, you shall keep this in mind. I sincerely do want the best for all of you, and hope that my own philosophizing can resonate in any way productive to your own generation of ideas.